Hi, my name's Gary. We're going to examine how the Church needs to respond in a perilous time when we face various levels of quarantine due to a pandemic. The pandemic may have its ups and downs over time, but we've lost some of our freedom to meet and worship in the old ways. We lose much of our easy access to our facilities and stand to lose many of our members if they don't have the old familiar patterns of church attendance to fall back on. Our new task then is to offer our people ways of being church in the new normal that's overtaken us. But wait, no. That's just trying to rescue the old church. That's just playing defense. There's a new normal, and out of it must come new ways of being church, because this so-called setback is actually a golden opportunity to get out of a rut and grow our church, to build a new dynamic church we've been too set on our ways to create. Until now. So let's stare down this new normal. How is it challenging us? How do we need to respond? We need to examine ourselves. We've been coasting too long. But the path is uphill now. We can't coast anymore. The old ways were getting stale. We've been a little uncomfortable with that for a while now, and we need to tap into a new energy. Bottom line, we need to reinvent ourselves for a new era. Let's work on that. We have to put a strong focus on a new reality. Take a long, hard look at how 2020 is different. We have to examine new ways of connecting with people, communicating with people, engaging with people, and building relationships with people. And we have to not be afraid to adopt new practices. A new era demands that we do things differently and hopefully more effectively. We need also to consider that we were already on the cusp of change when the pandemic hit. There were already big changes going on in society, and the church was gearing up to change. So now we're facing change upon change. First, in the old days, people were tied to their neighborhoods. It was almost their extended family. In modern times, your extended family is your network of people spread out across the city or across the world. Churches are still organized according to their local parish, but nowadays the new parish, to a growing extent, is a network in cyberspace. Now this pandemic thing has dramatically accelerated that shift, and churches have to reset their parameters. Second, many modern people are suspicious of fixed boundaries and set ideas. It's more fashionable to think outside the box. We need to help them know that God can be approached from any direction. Third, many have lost any sense of calling and are buried in a mindset of empty consumption. We need to restore a sense that life is not about what you consume, but what you do. But meaningless accumulation is losing its charm. Fourth, consumerism also attempts to replace a life of service with mere affluence. Here's where the core Christian message needs to be put forward. We were created to love and serve God and our neighbor. We have our work cut out for us. So while we're thinking of rebuilding the church, we have to think about how the church was built on a different foundation than what we face today. These trends have been identified in recent years by the Church of England. They started to raise red flags. Hey, things are changing. We're going to get left behind if we don't pay attention. Now, the first issue was, it's a different world nowadays. We used to live in villages and then in neighborhoods. They were our social circle. And our churches were organized into neighborhood parishes. But nowadays, people hardly know their neighbors. Their social circles are their networks. Many of these networks are quite far-flung. So we have two kinds of people in church. Those who really are next-door neighbors, and those whose neighbors are in the cloud or across the country. They bring different attitudes and different priorities into their church. This raises some interesting questions we should take a look at. about how we have to organize ourselves in the modern world. You can consider these questions by yourself or maybe in a discussion group in person or online. Let's run through them. Do you feel connected to your parish neighborhood or more to your own network of friends and associates? How connected do you feel to the local culture of your parish? Sometimes the parish gets a little divided into insiders and outsiders. Do those from outside the parish run the church differently? Do they differ in management practices, worship styles, or outreach goals? How can we help them all be one family? Is the idea of a parish outmoded? Is there another way to organize church? Where do you look for new people? Is the future online? Would new people coming from online fit in with your culture? Think about. Now let's go on to the second cultural shift we've identified. The second big social change over many decades or longer is, well, we think differently. It goes way back to the scientific revolution and the divorce from God that we call the Enlightenment. We all fancy ourselves lone wolf independent thinkers, and we don't bow down to any authorities. Plus, we don't think anybody's ideas should hold sway over us. We all want to be thinking outside the box nowadays, outside our own private little box. We hate structure. Don't give us religious dogma. We want to be free form. Give me something new and freewheeling and exciting. So how on earth are we going to tell them that the truth actually lies in the gospel? That it's accessed through an ancient book and an established ancient liturgy? We're working at a disadvantage nowadays. But some of these people are the ones who need to start thinking about what kind of higher authority there is. There's not just nothing. What good is freedom when nothing's sacred? And how can they get to know the Lord of the universe? So I have more questions to present. Does modern culture, with its distrust of authority, conflict with our obedience to God? How do we invite moderns to come kneel before our Creator and follow His word? How do we ask free, independent people to humbly follow Christ? How do we explain to them the Collect for Peace, which calls service to God perfect freedom? Can we offer them new ways of being church, from offbeat services to experimental liturgy, to musical alternatives, to worship outside the church, to community activism? How do we communicate with people fiercely attached to material prosperity and radical independence? What common ground do we have with them? What can we learn from each other? Next, let's look at another trend. A third way in which our values have changed is our loss of a sense of calling. We used to recognize that life gives everyone some kind of gift, something that they're uniquely equipped to do in life because of what they've inherited from their ancestors and what they've learned to do. People's mission in life then is to discern what God has endowed them with and run with it. In the days when Christendom was the default, people looked for that profession or that passion or that mission that gave their lives meaning. No longer. People nowadays live in order to consume, to be affluent, not so much in order to do something. We've turned inward. Reaching out to God and our neighbor, living to serve others have become outliers in our way of life, something that only odd or special people do. So let's ask some questions about these issues. How many of your parishioners enjoy a lifestyle of addictive consumption and affluence? How many would if they could? Do they think that's the proper way to live? Are they disenchanted with their acquisitive lifestyles? Are they open to the idea that self-indulgence runs contrary to Scripture? Do they want to follow a different path? Are they aware that society has moved away from a culture of serving others toward a culture of rampant consumerism? Do they feel part of a movement to turn that culture back around? How well do church leaders discern your gifts and callings and inspire you to choose a life of service? Are you steered away from an acquisitive mindset toward more meaningful goals?